welcome to our AI and the Workforce workshop. My name is Mike Morgan. I'm one of the directors at Hayes Technology based in Birmingham. I'm absolutely delighted today that we could be joined by four of the foremost experts in artificial intelligence, and we're going to be discussing how we can best prepare our businesses for the future. So, before we go into the discussions, I'd like to introduce our panel today. We have Dave Maclean, CEO of Pack Publishing, who you've heard from earlier, Csongor Barabasi, CEO of Fewer.work, Andrew Parris, Director of Performance Improvement from CRH, and Peet, Denny, CTO and founder of Birmingham's Artificial Intelligence Network. Please join me in a round of applause. So I'm going to start off with a question for Andrew. How is AI currently transforming the workplace?
Thanks, Mike. First of all, I'll put you right. I'm not an expert on AI. By any stretch of the imagination, I feel completely inadequate right here. However, I work for CRH. The business you might know in the UK is Tarmac, one of the businesses in the UK. And we have a shared service centre in the Midlands. And that shared service centre started an automation journey about 4 or 5 years ago. One of the tools and techniques we're using is RPA. We've got about 30-something use cases running, and we're just about to switch on. It may even have happened, our first AI. And it's changing the workplace. One of the quotes earlier on was about the removal of tasks. But it is definitely changing the workplace, both the combination of RPA, smart automation, AI, all of those aspects. But it's not changing it in the way that the press was suggesting it would change it. It's not removing as many jobs as the headlines would suggest. It's just changing the nature of work for those people that are there, and how they need to engage with the technology, how they need to actually exercise their grey matter. One of the phrases that our head of our automation program likes to use is, our job is to take the robot out of the human. That actually many of the tasks that we do in the workplace, certainly in a shared service centre, we shouldn't be doing, folk. We have created busy work because we've had to make do for inadequate systems in the past. So RPA, smart automation, AI is taking away that busy work, releasing grey matter to do what grey matter is good at.
Hey, what do you think about that? Similar?
I think, to be honest, I think we're still just getting started. We're still in the early days. I think AI is still on the periphery of a lot of organisations. So we're dipping our toes into RPA, we're dipping our toes into using chatbots to take some of the burden off the call centres. And there are a few kind of, more forward-thinking organisations using it in the back office. But the number of organisations using it to fundamentally change the way that they do business, I feel is still just really high-tech companies. So there are companies, for example, who've looked at material science and have figured out, wow, no new materials have been invented for quite a long time. We're going to use AI to genetically engineer yeast to produce new materials that have great new properties. And most companies aren't thinking on that kind of scale, although the technology is available for most companies to be using. So I think we're still right at the beginning of this transformation.
Csongor, what do you think the future holds? You're a fairly young CEO. What does it hold for your business?
Well, yeah, it's very interesting. I was just thinking that RPA and artificial intelligence has such a...
I think I'm a mind reader, that's a skill I have, and I'm wondering, what is RPA? Is that the right question?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So RPA is an abbreviation for Robotic Process Automation, and these are basically software robots. And when I say robots, they are not physical living on your PC, and mostly Windows machines. And they can basically do any tasks that a human can do, like typing, clicking the mouse, manipulating different softwares like Excel or your CRM system. So these are the RPA robots.
Yeah.
Okay.
Getting back to your question.
Yes, sorry.
So just adding a different perspective to it, because I think I'm the youngest here.
That's it.
You won't be able to get away with that very long.
So
Good job, Emma's got. She'd give you a hell if she heard you say that.
So from a millennial point of view, I think AI is super important if large businesses want to keep the millennials in the workforce, because we tend to be creative, we are free spirits, we need variety in our lives, so we don't really like to do the repetitive and boring work. So there is a high chance that if we do something repetitive, we will quit and we will start our own business. So
Can I just chip in and say I agree with you entirely, but I don't think it's unique to millennials.
No, quite right.
I don't like doing boring, repetitive work either. I'm certainly not millennial. And I think part of our opportunity has been to not just take advantage of the fact millennials, Generation Z, Generation Y are thinking differently, but also baby boomers have been sick and tired of doing the same old rubbish, the same old way for too long.
Okay.
So it's all generations in the workforce, I agree.
Absolutely, and I think you're a special case, but there are some people who, this is a good thing, because there are some people who just fear change.
Yes.
They are just used to the job that they did for 30 years, and they just don't want to invent the new stuff. So hopefully you can shift the perspective and also help millennials to stay more engaged in the workforce.
Perfect. Dave, can you tell us a little bit about what the future holds for publishing in terms of AI?
I was just thinking about how do we ourselves use AI at the moment, and there's two interesting places that we use it. First of all, we have we're a content company, so we have about 5,000 different book and video titles, and we have lots of transcripts for book and video. And one of the real problems that we have is what's all that content about? Labeling a large data set of content is a real problem. And the real problem with labeling always is, if you go through and label something, kind of Sod's law of labeling is, the moment you finish labeling it, you think of a new label, don't you? So you think, oh, but I wish that I'd gone back over those 5,000 things and put this label on it. Now the problem with that is that that never ends, and there's a great kind of sales insight in CRM, which is that, I remember talking to someone who ran a sales team. He said every now and then they used to have a kind of week where they'd go through their CRM and do a week of cleansing. And he basically used to lock everyone in the office, and they'd go back through the whole database and cleanse it all, get all the data sorted out, get the right labels on everything. And then after that week, by Tuesday afternoon, it was just as big a mess as it was the week before. It's a complete waste of time. And so that example of labelling, it sounds like a really bland and genuinely boring activity. Almost every business with any kind of catalogue or product type has a fundamental labelling problem. And so we use a piece of consumer AI software called Monkey-Learn, right? It's just a very trivial piece of software off the shelf. We pay a fee for doing it. And all it does is we've just taught it to go back through all of our text files and content and be able to say, well, this bit over here, these chapters, are kind of about this. So look, here are 25 chapters, and how similar are those 25 to this chapter? And therefore, is it a good bet to put the same label on it? And wow, across the 15,000 pages of new content our editorial teams generate a month, that's a fantastic win for us. And I can't even remember, this will really upset these guys selling AI software, I can't even remember how much Monkey-Learn is a month. It's like practically free. But I think there's another big point there, which is AI is one of those things, and I know as a kind of CEO, sometimes my chairman, actually my chairman's very good, but I can imagine around board tables all the time, and you must find this, Andrew. It's like, the chairman goes, what's our AI strategy, isn't it? What we do in AI. And that's exactly the wrong way to approach it. The question you really want to ask yourself is, what data have I got, and what's my data problem? What's really annoying, and what dot could I move? And dot to move is things like, how can I decrease the amount of time for this task which costs me a lot of money? Or, for example, the second piece of AI that we use is baked into our e-commerce platform, which is how can I get customers that visit our AI platform out of our 5,000 products, where you've got a dwell time on the sales page of microseconds. How can I put the 3 most relevant products in front of them that they might want to buy, right? Now, we haven't ourselves, coming on to your point, Pete, we haven't created that piece of AI ourselves. That's just embedded into the e-commerce platform that we happen to use. But the dot we're trying to move there, and let's face the dot as business people are all trying to move, is money, right? I just want a higher number of products in the basket for each visit, and I can't afford with whatever we get, maybe 2 million visits a month, to be hand merchandising all of those different pages. So actually getting your customers to train a piece of AI that's provided by some part of your software supply chain is actually where the cutting edge is now. Now, what do I think will happen in the future? I think there will be these two focuses, I think, for us. One of which is, again, our version of repetitive work, which is constant amount of markup labeling across large product databases, and the same for customers to bring them together so the right people get the right, and that's work that never ends, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? I mean, the equivalent in e-commerce of, like, you can never be too thin and too rich. You can never have high enough conversion and big enough basket size, can you? That's never going to end, right? So we'll just pour more and more money and effort into that. And the second thing is, how can we make our process, our editorial processes, more automatic and take a lot of the repetitive work out of it? And I think that's what you guys are calling the sort of RPA piece. Again, that will never end. You can never be too productive. You just move the needle a bit, learn and do some more. So those are two examples of things we're doing now that I think are the beginning of a really long and ongoing journey because they're completely intrinsic to our business.
Thanks very much. Pete, I'm going to ask you the next question. How can employees of all levels ensure they work with these technologies to add human value?
Okay, so I struggled with this question a little bit because if you're talking about employees at all levels, I don't think everybody has access to this. Not everybody's in control of this. This is something which is being done to a lot of employees, and that's a real shame. And I think that's not because of any volition of AI that it has itself. It's because of the goals and the values of the organisation. And I think that where this is going wrong is that a lot of organisations focus too much on making things cheaper and not enough on making things better. So if we now have been handed the most powerful technology mankind has ever seen, it's a massive waste of opportunity if we're not using that to make things better. So what some organisations are doing is creating brand new value streams, getting into new markets, and innovating like the way that their organisation works as a whole, or even changing their whole industry. So in terms of what individuals can do, I think somebody earlier on said it really nicely, which is that we're kind of now living in an age where everybody needs to see education and acquiring of new skills as being like a lifelong journey, and so to continue to pick up those skills. But the good news is that we are now living in the golden age of education. So world-class education is being given away for free or for very cheap by the world's best universities online.
Some organisations struggle with engagement of their employees with this kind of new technology. What do you think organisations and companies can do to better engage?
I agree with what Pete was just saying, that when you get it wrong, it's because you don't engage your teams adequately, but I don't agree that you can't engage. I think you can engage all the way through the organisation, and the risk is that you have it done to you, and it isn't unique to AI or RPA or any technology. It's pervasive to any change. Any change that's done to me, I immediately bolt at the idea. Think of Bojo. But any change that I'm engaged with, and I believe that the why of that change corresponds with the why of me, makes sense. So what we've tried hard to do is engage people all the way through the journey. So we didn't turn up one day and said, sorry, your job's gone, we've automated it. We got people involved in defining where the opportunities were, got them involved in developing the robots, got them involved in thinking about new opportunities. One of the best stories I have is a gentleman with 40 years work experience in the same kind of job in our organisation. And he is now one of our most creative idea generators in the organisation. To my point about it's not just millennials. You've got to find these people, you've got to connect them what it is that makes them tick. So yeah, we can involve people, but it's hard work. And it is about people, it isn't about the technology. The technology is the change, but it's about the people using the technology.
And just adding my 2 cents to that. So even with RPA now, as let's say resources are so accessible on the internet, some RPA providers have like online universities. And moreover, they also partnered with, I think they started in the USA, they partnered with universities to offer courses which train people in RPA and artificial intelligence. Although in AI, probably it's a bit harder to be trained, you have to be a computer scientist. But RPA is a bit more closer to what humans can grasp. So there are cases when, let's say, an economist by degree got into RPA and was able to build RPA robots. So I think as information is just more accessible, there are online courses, university partnerships. They are just trying to do everything possible to just help the workforce to embrace this change and learn and adapt.
What challenges have you had, Dave, engaging your workforce with all these new technologies?
Well, we're sort of lucky, I'll be frank. You know, our customers and therefore our kind of work culture is software developers, and we are in an industry which has been completely disrupted, which is content and media over the last 20 years. So actually, it's kind of this state of perpetual change, and most people who work in the both the technology sector but also in the tech publishing sector are kind of neophytes. They love new stuff anyway. So actually, we're not a great case study. But I think that where I agree with everyone on the panel is you've got to make it real for that person of how this directly benefits you, isn't it? And you know, that example about e-commerce is a great, when people kind of want to know what is the benefit of AI, right? You know, we're all sitting in this room engaged all the time in training AI bots on our behalf, right? So, you know, a great example is social media platforms underwent this incredible transition about 5 years ago, where what you saw in your social media feed ceased to be driven by who you connected to. They became driven by AI. Yeah. So that essentially everything you do, and every time you touch your phone screen, you're engaged in training an AI bot on your behalf. And so we're all pretty skilled at that, right? You know what I mean? We're all involved in AI bot training. It makes it really real for people. And it's not a big step then to kind of say, well, you know, as exactly as you guys say, well, what are the things that you do every day that you wish there was the equivalent of the bot taking stuff out of your Facebook feed you didn't want to see to make bits of your boring work go away? You know, these are not difficult conversations to have if they're framed in the right way, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think AI and this whole field can be simplified.
Yes.
You just have to approach it from the right perspective, not a perspective
You're
of
already
fear.
doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for us, one of the things we've done is focus on the problem, the process, the people, not the technology.
Yeah.
If we walked in, and to your point, Dave, what does RPA stand for? We can lose our audience very quickly, and I did, if we start talking about the wrong things. But by talking about the things that matter to them, and the problems that they face, the processes they have to deal with, and the fact that it's about them, and removing that repetitive, mundane activity, then you get a different level of engagement. But if you come in and say, I've got a solution for you, I've got some clever tech, people will either yawn, switch off, or the rare exception, the neophytes will actually run towards it, but that'll be the minority.
Can I ask you a question? Sorry, I'm stepping in. Can I ask you guys a question? Because those of you that saw the first keynotes with the chat talking about productivity, right? It made me rethink about AI and process automation, because he was saying the hardest work you do is thinking. And I'm just going to fess up to the fact, right? Most of my Friday afternoon is like, what I love is like an inbox full of really trivial emails that I can just go, yeah, I've sorted that. And it's like, I know damn well I'm not doing any thinking, right? So part of the sort of hidden problem, I think a little bit with process automation AI, is actually all the stuff you think you don't like, which is repetitive and boring work that you fill your day out so you can think about football, suddenly goes, and actually...
What am I? It changes that.
Yeah.
Who am I? What am I?
I mean, almost your biggest nightmare is an empty inbox, right? Because then you've got to go, I need to think about what I'm at. I've got to make some choices now. So I think we need to be sensitive towards taking the message of saying to somebody, I'm going to take away all the low-level repetitive parts of your job. To all of us sitting in this room, might seem like a really attractive message, but to some people it can be a highly ambiguous message, and I think we just need to be honest about that. Does that make sense?
I think we are shifting this also a psychological perspective.
What is
because,
work?
we are doing lots of repetitive work. We have the playbooks, and we just have to do them step by step. So, and some people never realize that they actually don't have self-confidence just because they don't trust their own thoughts.
I think that's right.
And that's because they don't have time for thinking. They don't dedicate time for thinking. But as you will dedicate time for strategy planning or whatever, and then you see those plans actually work out and make your business flourish and successful, you will just be more confident because, oh yes, I did that. It's
So that's
not
the
by
journey,
will.
isn't it?
It's a journey, absolutely. Failures, trials and errors.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Got a few minutes left just for one last question. And Pete, I'm going to send this one to you. What steps need to be taken to ensure AI is integrated into systems and processes successfully?
In 30 seconds.
Well, I think, to summarise what we've been saying here, to think like humans, think of the human impact of what it is that we're going to be doing. So we spent a long time in a company that I worked at a year ago, building systems to do X well. And what we found was that we'd replaced the part of the job that everybody really loves. So instead of removing the drudgery, we'd replace, and that would have been solved if we'd involved those in the process a lot more quickly. So anything to do with the human aspect, and in fact, that's the bit that we're quite good at, actually. That's the bit that robots will never be able to do, is the bits that make us human. Trying to think how we can use AI to strengthen those aspects rather than replacing them.
Csongor, any thoughts on that?
I think it's a huge key also to have like, you could call a center of excellence in your company, which is like start with a small team, which will focus only on AI, but ethical AI, which means that will take into account more the well-being and what will be the situation of your employees after you adopt AI. And if you have this center inside your company, which will be built by people working for you for a few years, not some outsider outsourcing company, that means that they will build definitely a product or a process which will be beneficial not only for the business itself, but also for people working there.
Can I add something? So I really like the idea of having a centre of excellence. I think it's also quite important to make sure that you spread out the knowledge of AI in your company. What I've seen works really well is that you form some kind of guild or club or something like that where people from lots of different parts of the business come together, learn about AI, read papers in their spare time, watch videos, go on courses, and then discussing once a week how that could impact our business. Because innovation, any true innovation, comes from a real mix of people.
Well, look, thank you very much for your time today. And sadly, that's all we've got time for. But if you would like to grab any of our panelists over lunch and ask them some questions, I'm sure you'll be happy to oblige. So please put your hands together for our fantastic panelists. And I believe lunch is being served downstairs where you all came in where the tea and coffee is. So